Did you know that over 60% of Australians are now struggling to afford basic living expenses? And that in some cities, renting a modest home can cost you more than half of your monthly income? Australia, once seen as a land of endless opportunities, golden beaches, and peaceful suburbs, is rapidly becoming a place many can no longer afford to call home. But it's not just about money. Raging bushfires, record-breaking floods, and scorching heat waves are now part of everyday life. Healthcare systems are stretched, wages have barely moved in years, and even skilled workers are finding it harder to stay or migrate. Australia's shining reputation is quietly cracking beneath the surface, and hardly anyone is talking about it. So why is this happening? And could life in Australia soon become impossible for millions? Stay with me, because today we're diving into 10 shocking reasons that will truly make you rethink the Australian dream. Number 1. Skyrocketing cost of living. Let's start with one of the most painful realities for Australians today: the skyrocketing cost of living. Across the country, people are feeling the financial squeeze like never before. In fact, recent studies reveal that household expenses in Australia have risen faster than wages for over a decade. Groceries, fuel, electricity, rent. The prices of everyday essentials are climbing at an alarming rate. For many families, simply keeping the lights on and putting food on the table is becoming a monthly battle. Consider this. In Sydney and Melbourne, rent for an average 2-bedroom apartment now consumes over 50% of the median household income. It's not just big cities. Even regional towns are seeing housing costs surge to record highs. And it's not just rent or mortgages. Fuel prices have soared, pushing transportation costs beyond what most people can comfortably afford. Even basic groceries, like fruit, vegetables, and bread, now carry premium price tags, forcing many to cut back on essential items. What's even more concerning is that wages have barely kept pace with these rising costs. This wage stagnation has left thousands trapped in a cycle where no matter how hard they work, they simply can't get ahead. For many Australians, financial security feels further and further out of reach. It raises a serious question. Can people realistically continue to build a life in Australia when just surviving is becoming this expensive? This is a critical issue that's quietly pushing many to consider leaving the country in search of a more affordable life elsewhere. Number 2. Housing crisis. Australia is currently facing one of its worst housing crises in modern history. It's no longer just about expensive homes, it's about the growing reality that finding a home at all has become a near impossible mission for many people. Across major cities and even regional areas, the demand for housing far outweighs the supply. The result? Sky-high rents, brutal bidding wars, and a generation that feels completely locked out of the property market. Recent reports show that rental vacancy rates in many Australian cities have dropped below 1%, an unprecedented level that's driving rental prices through the roof. For people looking to buy, the situation is just as dire. Property prices may have cooled slightly in some areas, but they remain among the highest in the world when compared to average incomes. This means that even with years of saving, many Australians simply cannot afford a home of their own. The ripple effect is devastating. Homelessness is rising. Families are forced into overcrowded housing, and young people are living with their parents well into their 30s because moving out is financially impossible. There's also increasing social pressure and emotional strain as people feel like they're falling behind in life simply because the system is stacked against them. The dream of owning a home, once considered a basic part of the Australian lifestyle, is quickly slipping away. And this isn't just affecting locals. Even international students and skilled migrants are struggling to find affordable accommodation, making Australia a less attractive destination overall. When shelter becomes a luxury, what's left of the dream? Number 3. Harsh climate change effects. Australia is no stranger to extreme weather, but in recent years, the country has been hit by some of the most brutal climate events in its history. What was once considered rare is now frighteningly common. Bushfires that used to occur every few decades are now tearing through communities almost every summer. These fires don't just destroy homes, they take lives, devastate wildlife, and leave long-lasting scars on the environment. And it's not just fires. Australia has been pummeled by record-breaking floods, powerful cyclones, and relentless droughts. Towns have been submerged, farmland has been ruined, and water shortages are becoming the new normal. The Australian Bureau of Meteorology has confirmed that the country is heating faster than the global average, making these extreme conditions even more likely in the future. These climate disasters don't just bring temporary inconvenience, they threaten entire ways of life. People living in high-risk areas are now forced to make tough decisions, rebuild, relocate, or abandon their homes altogether. Insurance premiums are skyrocketing, some properties are becoming uninsurable, and others are losing their value entirely. It's a terrifying reality when the place you've built your life around is no longer safe. And as these events become more frequent and more intense, many Australians are questioning whether it's worth the risk to stay. Could Australia's beautiful beaches, sunny skies, and unique wildlife be overshadowed by its growing climate dangers? This is the hard truth many are now facing. Number 4. Unaffordable healthcare for many. Australia is often praised for its public healthcare system, Medicare. But the reality on the ground is starting to look very different. More and more Australians are struggling to access timely, affordable healthcare. Waiting times for public hospitals are blowing out to alarming lengths, with some patients waiting months or even years for essential treatments and surgeries. And if you think private healthcare is the solution, think again. Private health insurance premiums have skyrocketed, putting extra pressure on family budgets. Many Australians are now forced to pay huge out-of-pocket costs just to receive basic care. Even common services like dental, physiotherapy, and mental health support are becoming unaffordable luxuries for many working families. What's worse is that rural and regional Australians are hit even harder. Specialist doctors are often hundreds of kilometres away, and long travel times add to the already overwhelming cost. For these communities, getting critical care isn't just expensive, it's sometimes impossible. Recent health reports warn that Australia's healthcare system is reaching a breaking point. Staff shortages, underfunded hospitals, and rising patient demand are creating a perfect storm where people simply can't get the help they need when they need it. It's a frightening thought. What good is living in a beautiful country if you can't access the care that keeps you alive and well? For many Australians, this harsh reality is forcing them to consider drastic choices, either go into serious debt to stay healthy, or think about leaving for countries with more accessible healthcare. Number 5. Wage stagnation. Imagine working harder every year, but never really getting ahead. That's the harsh situation many Australians are facing right now due to wage stagnation. Even though the cost of living has exploded, salaries have barely moved in the last decade. The result? People are working longer hours, taking on multiple jobs, and still struggling to cover the basics. Recent studies from the Australian Bureau of Statistics reveal that wage growth has consistently fallen behind inflation. This means that even if you're earning more on paper, your real purchasing power is shrinking. Groceries, housing, healthcare, everything costs more, but your paycheck doesn't stretch any further. For the average worker, this creates a constant feeling of financial stress and burnout. This isn't just about lifestyle, it's about survival. People are sacrificing their mental health, family time, and even their long-term dreams just to keep up with everyday bills. Young Australians are losing hope of ever affording a home, starting a family, or even retiring comfortably. For many, the system feels broken. No matter how hard they try, they're trapped in a cycle where working harder doesn't lead to a better life. When your effort is no longer rewarded, when your dreams feel permanently out of reach, it forces you to question everything. Is staying in Australia really worth it? This growing wage crisis is pushing many Australians to look for opportunities elsewhere, in countries where hard work still pays off. We pour our hearts into creating these videos to bring you real, valuable stories. So if this made you think, drop a comment and tell us your thoughts. Hit that subscribe button. It's just one click, but it means the world to us. Number 6. Isolation from the rest of the world. Australia is known for its breathtaking landscapes and wide open spaces. But there's a flip side to that beauty. It's extreme geographical isolation. Living in Australia often means being cut off from the rest of the world, and for many, this isolation is becoming a serious challenge. International travel to and from Australia is incredibly expensive and time-consuming. A flight to Europe or North America can take over 20 hours and cost thousands of dollars. For people with family overseas, visiting loved ones can feel like an impossible dream, especially as global airfares continue to climb. The pandemic made this worse. Australia's strict border closures and prolonged lockdowns highlighted just how distant the country really is from everyone else. But it's not just about physical distance. Many Australians now feel a sense of cultural and economic isolation too. Trends, opportunities, and global events often take longer to reach Australia, and this can make people feel left behind or disconnected from the rest of the world. Businesses, particularly small ones, face higher costs when importing goods, and consumers pay premium prices because of this isolation. This growing sense of distance isn't just inconvenient, it can be deeply lonely. For immigrants, students, and even long-time residents, Australia's remoteness can make it feel like they're living on an island that's slowly drifting further away from the global community. So here's the question: how long can people accept this distance before they start looking for somewhere more connected? For many, the emotional and financial cost of being so far from the rest of the world is becoming too high to bear. Number 7. Strict immigration policies. Australia has long been seen as a land of opportunity, attracting skilled workers, students, and families from all over the world. But in recent years, the country's immigration policies have become stricter and more complex, making it much harder for people to move there or stay long-term. The visa process, once manageable, is now loaded with long waiting periods, higher fees, and tighter eligibility rules. Even highly skilled workers are facing delays of up to 2 or 3 years just to get their applications processed. For families, this means living in limbo, unable to plan their futures, unable to reunite with loved ones. These constant roadblocks are pushing many to give up and look elsewhere. International students who once poured billions into the Australian economy are also feeling the squeeze. Recent changes have made it more difficult for students to transition into permanent residency after graduation. This discourages bright, talented individuals from contributing to the Australian workforce and instead drives them toward more welcoming countries. What's even more worrying is that industries like healthcare, construction, and technology, sectors that desperately need workers, are now struggling to fill critical jobs. Australia's strict policies are backfiring, causing skills shortages and slowing economic growth. Australia risks becoming a place where it's simply too hard to stay, too hard to start, and too hard to build a future. When a country closes its doors, people will eventually stop knocking. Number 8. Environmental degradation. When people picture Australia, they often imagine stunning beaches, lush rainforests, and the breathtaking Great Barrier Reef. But sadly, this natural beauty is under serious threat. Australia is facing one of the fastest rates of environmental degradation in the world, and much of this damage is becoming irreversible. Take the Great Barrier Reef, one of the country's most iconic natural wonders. Scientists have confirmed that over half of the reef's coral has already been lost due to bleaching, pollution, and rising sea temperatures. Once a vibrant ecosystem filled with life, parts of the reef are now grey, lifeless, and collapsing. UNESCO has even warned that the reef could soon lose its World Heritage status if urgent action isn't taken. Deforestation is another growing issue. Australia clears millions of hectares of native forest every year, often for agriculture and development. This not only destroys habitats, but also threatens unique wildlife like koalas and kangaroos, pushing them closer to extinction. Rivers and waterways are being polluted, and waste management is becoming a national crisis as plastic and industrial pollution pile up. For many Australians, it's heartbreaking to watch their beloved landscapes disappear. The damage isn't just an environmental issue, it's an emotional loss, a cultural shift, and a warning sign of what could come if no serious changes are made. If Australia's most precious natural treasures continue to vanish, what will remain to inspire people to stay? The paradise many once dreamed of is quietly fading, and that's a reality too painful for some to accept. Number 9. Rising crime and social tensions. Australia has often been viewed as a safe and peaceful country, but in recent years, the rise in crime and growing social tensions are beginning to change that perception. Many cities are now reporting increases in property crimes, assaults, and social unrest, leaving people feeling less secure in their own neighbourhoods. Statistics from local police forces show that burglary, car theft, and street violence have been steadily increasing, particularly in major urban areas. While Australia still ranks as safer than some countries, the noticeable spike in these crimes has made safety a growing concern for both residents and visitors. People are now spending more on home security, moving out of certain suburbs, and even considering relocation to safer regions or other countries. But crime is only part of the story. Social inequality is widening, and frustration is boiling over. The housing crisis, wage stagnation, and rising living costs are fueling resentment, protests, and community divisions. In some areas, tensions between different social groups are becoming more visible, creating uncomfortable and sometimes volatile situations. For many Australians, this growing social pressure feels like a ticking time bomb. When people feel unsafe and unheard, they naturally begin to look for better options elsewhere. The Australia of yesterday, a land of peace, stability, and opportunity, feels increasingly out of reach for those caught in the middle of these growing tensions. So here's the question. When your home no longer feels safe, what's keeping you there? For a rising number of people, the honest answer is nothing. Number 10. Political instability and policy shifts. Australia is often seen as politically stable, but beneath the surface, growing dissatisfaction with the government and constant policy flip-flops are shaking public confidence. In the last decade alone, Australia has cycled through 6 prime ministers, with leadership changes happening so frequently that many citizens have lost trust in their political system. This instability has serious consequences. Important national issues like climate change, housing affordability, and healthcare reform are being poorly managed or completely ignored. Governments are constantly shifting direction, introducing new policies one year and tearing them down the next. For the average Australian, this creates confusion, frustration, and a sense that no one is really in charge. One of the most damaging examples is the climate policy back and forth. Australia has swung between climate action and climate denial, leaving the country unprepared for worsening environmental disasters. Housing policy is another sore point. Promises to address the housing crisis often sound good during elections, but quickly vanish when it's time for real action. For many, it feels like the system is broken. They see a political environment where short-term gains are prioritized over long-term solutions, and where everyday people's needs are ignored. This lack of trust in leadership is driving some Australians to question whether their voices truly matter. When you can't rely on your leaders, when promises are constantly broken, What future are you really building? For some, the answer is becoming clear. Perhaps it's time to build that future somewhere else. So, is the Australian dream truly slipping away? From the crushing cost of living and an unforgiving housing market to extreme climate events, healthcare struggles, and strict immigration hurdles, the challenges are piling up. Add in rising crime, deepening social tensions, environmental loss, and political instability, and it's clear that many Australians are starting to feel like the odds are stacked against them. This isn't about painting Australia in a negative light. It's about opening our eyes to the growing realities that people are facing every day. For some, these challenges are pushing them to reconsider their future in this beautiful country. Is staying really worth the financial pressure, the risks, and the growing uncertainties? Of course, Australia still has so much to offer, but the cracks are becoming harder to ignore. And perhaps, more importantly, these issues need to be talked about, not hidden. Only when we face them head on can we hope to build something better. What do you think? Is life in Australia becoming impossible? Or is there still hope to turn things around? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your story. And don't forget to subscribe. It's just one click, but it means the world to us.